In this video, learn about all the most important and catastrophic wars, from ancient wars like the Punic Wars, all the way to modern wars such as World War II, and even ongoing wars like the Ukraine and Gaza War. These will be explained in the most entertaining and time-efficient manner, so watch the video all the way to the end so you can become more informed. The Trojan War, as depicted in Greek mythology, is supposedly occurred around the 12th century BC and involved a legendary war between the city of Troy and a coalition of Greek states. The war's cause was the abduction of Helen by Paris of Troy, which led to a Greek invasion to retrieve her. The Greeks famously used a wooden horse to take over the city, leading to Troy's destruction. Though the historical accuracy of the Trojan War is debated, it has left a mark on Western literature and art, influencing works like Odyssey. The Persian Wars. The Persian Wars were a series of wars between the Persian Empire and Greece. Conflict began with the Persian Empire attempting to expand into Greece, first encountering resistance from Greek colonies in Asia Minor. The most famous battles of the war occurred at Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis. Despite facing overwhelming numbers, the Greeks, particularly the Athenians, were able to repel the Persians and secure their independence. The wars were a pivotal moment in the history of establishing the dominance of Greek culture and ideas, and they laid the foundation for the future rise of the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great. The Peloponnesian War. The Peloponnesian War was a war between Athens and its allies, or Sparta and its allies. This war had shifting alliances, prolonged sieges, and the collapse of Athenian power. Athens, with its strong navy, engaged in a strategy of naval superiority and indirect warfare, while Sparta, with its superior land army, sought direct confrontation. The war decimated the Greek city-states, leaving them vulnerable to later conquest by Macedonia. The aftermath also led to the weakening of the classical Greek ideals and paved the way for the rise of more authoritarian forms of government in Greece. The Punic Wars. The Punic Wars are a series of 3 wars between Rome and Carthage. The first Punic War was fought for control of the island of Sicily and ended with Rome's victory and its expansion of its naval power. In the second Punic War, the famous Carthaginian general Hannibal brought the fight to Rome, famously crossing the Alps with elephants to invade Italy, but ultimately failed to secure victory due to Rome's resilience and strategic countermeasures. The third Punic War resulted in the complete destruction of Carthage, after which Rome expanded its dominance over the western Mediterranean. These wars are credited with shaping Rome's transition from a regional power to a Mediterranean superpower. The 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War was a war between the Catholic countries of Spain and Austria versus the Protestant countries of France, Sweden, Prussia, and Denmark. The war started between the Protestant and Catholic factions within the Holy Roman Empire. Then it spread throughout Europe. The war caused destruction with widespread famine, disease, and civilian casualties. The Peace of Westphalia, which ended the war, marked the beginning of the modern state system by recognizing the sovereignty of individual nations. This war also established the idea of religious tolerance in European diplomacy. The Napoleonic Wars. The Napoleonic Wars were wars between Napoleon's French army versus various European coalitions. These wars altered the European political landscape and were a result of Napoleon's ambition to spread the republics throughout Europe. With stunning victories at battles like Austerlitz and Leipzig, Napoleon seemed destined to dominate Europe. However, his disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812, combined with the resilience of the British, led to his downfall. After his exile to Elba, Napoleon escaped and was ready for round 2, but Napoleon was finally defeated at Waterloo in 1815. The wars not only ended the Napoleonic era, but also inspired movements of nationalism and liberalism across Europe. The American Revolution. The American Revolution was sparked by growing discontent in the American colonies with Britain. The early battles at Lexington and Concord ignited widespread rebellion, and the Continental Congress, led by George Washington, declared independence from Great Britain in 1776. The war featured significant battles, including Saratoga, which persuaded France to enter the war as an ally to the U.S., and Yorktown, where British General Cornwallis surrendered to Washington's forces in 1781. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 formally recognized U.S. independence. This revolution not only reshaped the political landscape of North America, but also sparked revolutionary movements around the world. The American Civil War. The American Civil War was a war between the United States of America versus the Confederate States of America. This war was driven by issues over slavery, states' rights, and economic interest. The Union, led by President Abraham Lincoln, sought to preserve the United States as one nation and to end the practice of slavery, while the Confederacy fought to maintain slavery and to secede from the Union. The war had bloody battles at Gettysburg and Antietam, and saw technological advances like the ironclad warships. The war ended with the surrender of the South to Appomattox in 1865, leading to the abolishment of slavery through the 13th Amendment, and the beginning of the difficult Reconstruction period for the Southern states. World War I. World War I was a global war between the Entente, which included France, Great Britain, Russia, Italy, and America, versus Central Powers, which included Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. It was ignited by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. The war was characterized by trench warfare, massive loss of life, and the use of new technologies such as tanks, machine guns, poison gas, flamethrowers, grenades, airplanes, submarines, and armored cars. The war featured significant battles at Marne, Gallipoli, Jutland, Verdun, and Brusilov. The war's end in 1918 saw the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, which imposed harsh reparations on Germany and redrew borders across Europe. The conflict caused a shift in global power, leading to the collapse of empires like Austria-Hungary and Ottoman Empire, and laid the groundwork for World War II. World War II. World War II was the most catastrophic war in human history, involving nearly every nation in the world. It began with the invasion of Poland by Nazi Germany, followed by the U.S. entry into the war after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. The war involved massive battles such as Stalingrad, D-Day, and the Pacific Island hopping campaigns, and saw new technological advances such as radars, the atomic bomb, and jet aircraft. The war ended with the unconditional surrender of Germany in May of 1945 and Japan in September 1945 after the U.S. dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war's aftermath led to the establishment of the United Nations and a new era of U.S. and Soviet rivalry known as the Cold War. The Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a Cold War-era conflict that pitted communist North Vietnam, backed by Soviet Union and China, against South Vietnam, supported by America. The U.S. sought to prevent the spread of communism in Southeast Asia, leading to a direct military intervention. The war was marked by intense guerrilla warfare and the use of heavy airstrikes and chemical agents, and saw new technological advances such as the Huey, Claymore mines, the grenade launcher, TOW missiles, and the F-100 Super Sabre. Despite having a superior military, the U.S. was unable to defeat the determined North Vietnamese forces. The war ended with the fall of Saigon in 1975, leading to the unification of Vietnam under communist rule, sparking widespread anti-war protests in the U.S. The Gulf War. The Gulf War was a war between the United States of America and Iraq, and began when Iraq, under the leadership of Saddam Hussein, invaded Kuwait over oil reserves and territorial disputes. A U.S.-led force was formed to push Iraqi forces out of Kuwait. The war saw new technology, including stealth aircraft, UAVs, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and GPS. The war was largely fought in the desert, with Operation Desert Storm being the most famous military campaign. Iraq was forced to retreat, and Kuwait was liberated, but Saddam Hussein remained in power. The Gulf War demonstrated the effectiveness of modern military technology and the role of the U.S. in global geopolitics. The Afghanistan War. The Afghanistan War was a war between the United States of America and Afghanistan, and began in response to September 11th terrorist attacks. The early years of the war saw the rapid overthrow of the Taliban, but the conflict soon turned into an insurgency as the Taliban regrouped. The war saw the use of new technologies like the F-22, the F-35, the M1A2 Abrams, and the MQ-1 Predator. The U.S. focused on counterinsurgency, nation building, and combating terrorism, but the conflict remained in a stalemate for much of its duration. In 2021, the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, and the Taliban regained control of the country, and control over $7 billion worth of American military equipment. It raised many questions about the effectiveness of the intervention and the challenges of rebuilding a war-torn country. The Ukraine War. The Ukraine War is a war between Ukraine and Russia, and began when Russia launched a full-scale invasion into Ukraine, citing security concerns and the desire to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. The war has resulted in widespread destruction, with intense battles for control of key cities like Kyiv, Mariupol, and Donetsk. The Ukrainian resistance has proven unexpectedly strong, forcing Russia to reassess its military strategy. The war has also caused a humanitarian crisis, with millions of refugees fleeing the conflict. The international community remains divided, with Western countries supporting Ukraine with military aid and sanctions on Russia, while Russia seeks to solidify control over Ukrainian territory. The war is shaping the future of European security and international relations. The Gaza War. The Gaza War is a war between Israel and Palestine over territorial disputes, political autonomy, and security. These wars have been marked by rocket attacks, airstrikes, and and military operations in the densely populated Gaza Strip, resulting in high casualties, especially among civilians. Wars often erupt in response to escalation and violence, including disputes over Jerusalem, settlement building, or retaliatory attacks. The conflict is rooted in a long history of territorial disputes, with both Israelis and Palestinians seeking sovereignty over the same land. Despite several ceasefires and peace negotiations, a lasting resolution remains elusive, and the situation continues to fuel tensions in the Middle East.